Why are we here? Well, the reason why we're here is this is an interpretive center where we share the cultural history of the surrounding lands. We know that people have been here at the Alviso Adobe site for well over 5,000 years. Starting with the Ohlone people, this location might possibly have been a place where they may have held ceremonies related to their culture. We have some archaeological evidence that shares that with us. As we go along, we find that other people came here for the same reasons that the Ohlone did. It was a great place. So the first explorers showed up in this valley, and over time, as the missions developed, large ranchos were being developed also here in the valley. And those ranchos celebrated what we would call the Californios period. This was before California was part of the United States. And another one of the things that we're trying to do is share that culture also. Later on, we had the development of tenant farming, and over time, the tenant farming developed into what was known as the Meadowlark Dairy, which I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot about later on.
Where do we start?
Well, really, I think you start with the milk and the cattle, and you're producing a standard of milk that wasn't, we set precedents back in the 1920s with being the first certified dairy in Alameda County, which it might be the first certified dairy in the state of California, but there were some other people in LA that were trying to get this passed at the same time.
The raw milk was something that was particularly valuable or considered an important product in the early days in the 1920s and 30s, because it was considered to be kind of like the most perfect food. They used it. It was important in hospitals and where they had like premature babies or sick babies, and they used that to help nurse them at the time.
I think let's go back in a period of time when you usually had a farm. Your family lived on the farm where you raised your own chickens and you raised your own hogs and you raised your own dairy cattle, and you produced your milk and your butter from the cow. Somebody went to the barn to milk the cow, and you brought the bucket in and sat it on the dairy table. Well, eventually years went by, then they became a point where there was less farms and more houses and industry. And I believe that that's when they started coming up with more dairy farmers that wanted to produce bigger amounts of volume that could be used. And that became a point where all of a sudden the milk wasn't refrigerated. It would start going sour, and all of a sudden people were getting sick on it and deciding that maybe we needed some regulations. And these people were the forefathers that started that whole process of standards of milk, where it was pasteurized, cleaned, and it was also certified to keep infants in like our Berkeley hospitals and Alameda County hospitals, that they could give to premature babies and also newborn babies that were hospitalized. And it was sterile milk that the child wouldn't get sick on, because there was nothing else for them to give the child.
When the Meadowlark Dairy was established in 1919, Bob Dana was hired by Walter Briggs to manage the dairy, and one of the projects that he took on at the time was to plant walnut trees to create additional sources of income and crops, I guess, for the farm. He planted about 100 walnut trees up and down Foothill Road and part of Bernal. They were I recall Frankettes, Mayettes, and Paynes were the types of walnuts. We would, in the late summer, early fall, September, October time, the walnuts would ripen. We would go to the trees with our hands, as kids and all that kind of stuff. Pickers.
It's been a lot of fun interning at the Alviso Adobe. I've learned a lot about collections accessioning. This has actually really helped me because I want to become an anthropologist, especially in involving museum collectioning and that kind of thing. So this has been a lot of help in that. Well, I would say that the exhibits here are a lot more personal. I think that they are a lot more just inherently interactive than a lot of the bigger museums, which I think is really nice for a cultural history museum. But I think that really behind the scenes, you really see the same processes, just kind of in a smaller scale, depending on the size of the museum. So a big part, I think, of this period is just self-sufficiency. So we have a lot of tools that would really help make this kitchen come alive during the olden times, and just really show how people really had to do all of these things by themselves in the kitchen, as opposed to like just run to your nearest Safeway. So here, for example, we have like a coffee grinder, which I think is really interesting because nowadays a lot of people just buy, for example, like coffee grinds already made in the bag, like from Starbucks or something. And we also have things like that are similar, like the pitter, which I think is pretty cool because we don't really see that anymore. And I think that what's really interesting to me is that there's things here like nutmeg and like almond extract that they're just things that we still use today. And I just think it's cool how people back then used just really similar things. And you can really see kind of the continuation of even just this material culture that's still relevant today.
And so for a long time we felt that there was archaeological significance that needed to be investigated here at the Alviso Adobe. The Cal State East Bay, with its students, conducted field surveys and actually an archaeological dig here on a number of occasions. And they developed the exhibits that I'm sitting in front of right here, showing many of the artifacts that have been found on the property, and explaining the significance of our history. And in fact, one of the things that continues to show the Alviso Adobe transformation, it's a wonderful brochure, Unearthing the Past, that describes the exhibit and was developed in conjunction with the Alviso Adobe staff and Cal State East Bay archaeology students. Adobe has transformed in many ways, not only with the buildings and the exhibits, which progress and improve all the time, but also because of the many programs that are given. I have talked to quite a few young individuals, both in the 3rd and 4th grade as well as teenagers, that have attended the programs here, such as the Ridge Runners. And there are literally hundreds and hundreds of individuals that have benefited by the programs here.
So we have used Eric in many different ways at Valley View. This is our going into our 8th year of working with him. And that was the same year I started in Pleasanton, was the same year he started in Pleasanton. So it was really, we learned a lot of things together as we went about how to best use him in the classroom. So we've used him in our school, and we've also come to the Adobe, and he's also taking us on hikes up onto the Pleasanton Ridge. The first years before the Adobe was open, he would come out to Valley View and he would do different presentations about the Ohlone, because in 3rd grade it's local Pleasanton history, so we focus mostly on the Ohlone, which are our local Native Americans. So he'll come out and he has a lot of things that he has handmade and things that he has found that help teach the students about the Ohlone and the natural area around Pleasanton. And then when the Adobe opened, then we were able to actually come here, and he was able to do the same presentations here. And those were really fun because one of the favorite ones the kids love to do is go and grind into the rock down there, and he lets them shoot arrows into a hoop, and those are some of their favorite things to do. So when we first started with Eric, he mainly focused 3rd grade at our school because, you know, with local history, and he was a local person for Pleasanton, the Pleasanton naturalist. So it made sense that he worked with 3rd grade originally. But now I know 2nd grade uses him, and he walked down to the Cottager Creek and do things with him there. And I think other grade levels are also working with him because he's really great about focusing on grade levels and what exactly the needs are. A couple times he and I have worked together and he'll say, I have an idea, do you think this will work? And he's really in tune to figuring out exactly what's the best thing for to happen in the classroom. And the parents and the kids just love when we come and meet with Eric. I mean, the kids just rave about him. They think he's so much fun. And a lot of my students do bridge runners with him during the summer for camp. And then a lot of students, after we meet with him during our different activities that we do with him through the year, end up doing Ridge Runners later because they really enjoy him and what he brings to what they're learning. Well, that would be new this year in Pleasanton especially. So one way that he can definitely help with Common Core would be that Common Core, a big part of it is problem solving and deeper thinking. And so the same thing that I was saying before about how the students would read a book and there's only so much they can get just from reading the book, the hands-on experience they get from him, they can take that and turn that into more problem solving and deeper thinking skills.
I'm the guy who set up the service project.
We're here working for the National Charity League, or NCL, which is a national mother-daughter organization. Well, our organization supports the Alviso Adobe on a regular basis for most of their events. So through our organization, we're able to sign up to volunteer. And we have opportunities throughout the course of the year whenever the Adobe needs help. Our organization tries to come over and provide some labor in whatever way we can.
Families come to the Alviso Adobe for a lot of reasons. Probably the first and the biggest reason is that we offer classes for the public on the weekends. We offer a wide selection of classes. They're under the Natural World section of the Community Services Activities Guide. We cover topics having to do with the outdoors, like plants and animals, and then we also cover some cultural history topics. So like in the fall, we're gonna have a class about weaving and loom use. So that's a big draw for families. Then we also have families who just drive by on Foothill Road and they see us and they wanna come check it out, see what we have, what's inside the buildings. And then there's always families who are looking for something to do on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Some way to spend an hour, so they'll just come and hang out and do some of the activities that we have. We've got lots of activities out for children, and then some interesting things for parents and other adults to look at and learn from.
I'm in the LIT, or Leadership and Training Program, for the City of Pleasanton. At the Halloween event, we helped set up the different stations inside the main area, and also in the bunkhouse. We set up stations where the kids could look at animals and we talked to them about the different types of animals and let them pet them to see what it feels like.
Well, both my kids have been involved with Ridge Runners for a number of years, which is kind of administered out of this area here. And so they've had the experiences early on with learning about the environment and learning how to be safe and enjoying an unscripted experience in nature. So that's been good for both of them.
I've been a docent at Alviso Adobe since it opened 5 years ago. I'm also a member of the Friends of Alviso Adobe. So my job as a docent has been to help in any way I can, particularly with the programs here. And we give cultural heritage as well as historical programs.
Well, volunteers help at the Adobe in a lot of different directions. One of the ways that they help out is in working with the development of the gardens that we have up here. We're trying to improve habitat, which will encourage wildlife to utilize the park as their home. So that's one of the real important jobs that volunteers are doing up here.
I think what we're looking at doing in the immediate future is adding in some more hands-on opportunities just for the drop-in visitors. So people who just kind of stroll into the park, they're looking to spend some time. We want to develop some more activities that they can do around the park in the different buildings to explore things a little more in depth, things that they can just kind of pick up and take and go ahead and do on their own. So that's probably what's going to happen in the immediate future. We're always looking into rotating out some of our temporary exhibits. So we have some Ohlone exhibits, and then we also have our exhibit that's based on the archaeological dig that a class from Cal State East Bay did. So we're probably gonna switch those out in the future and then do some more exhibit work in the Adobe. And also, we are always looking to expand and kind of refine our field trip selection for teachers.
Well, there's been a lot of really great responses to the park. Of course, we're always trying to get more people up here, and as they discover the park, they're realizing that there are a lot of neat things to do here. The park itself is a beautiful place. On Saturdays and Sundays, we do programs for the public, and then throughout the week, we're doing a lot of programs for the school teachers and the students in the area. And so the Alviso Adobe is providing learning opportunities for all sorts of different groups here. At this time, I would like to extend a thank you to all of the members of the community that have been so instrumental in helping with the Alviso Adobe Community Parks development. We've had high school students coming up here to get their service hours. Scouts have helped with projects of all sorts that have been very instrumental here at the park. Members of the community and the Museum on Main have been very helpful in regards to providing us with accurate historical information relating to the park's program delivery. And I just would really like to say, without all of you, we couldn't have made it this far. So thank you so much for helping us here at the Adobe Park. One huge component of the Alviso Adobe Park is that we're the stewards of this landscape. For thousands of years, other people have been here, and they took care of the land in different ways related to their cultural needs. But at this time, it's our job to take care of the land. And so I would like to encourage you to come up to the park and learn about what we're doing up here, have a good time, and maybe fill out a volunteer application because we can always use another hand. Thank you so much again for helping us here at the Alviso Adobe Community Park.